The auctioneer's voice hadn't even finished echoing when the entire room burst into laughter. It wasn't the kind of laughter that came from joy. It was sharp, cutting, and cold, the kind that makes your chest tighten and your hands feel suddenly too heavy to lift. All eyes were on a rusted, dented car sitting under harsh daylight outside the small Texas auction yard, its faded paint peeling like old memories. And standing beside it, gripping a crumpled envelope with shaking hands, was a man who had already lost too much to lose anything else. Ethan Walker didn't look up. He just stared at the car. And then she spoke. Her voice was smooth, confident, and loud enough for everyone to hear. She laughed lightly, tilting her sunglasses down just enough to look at him like he was something beneath her. She asked, almost mockingly, if he was seriously about to spend his last $100 on that piece of junk. The crowd laughed again. Ethan didn't answer. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that prove life can turn around in the most unexpected ways, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Real Single Dad Life. Because this one stays with you. Ethan Walker wasn't always a man who counted every dollar like it was his last. There was a time when life had structure, when mornings began with purpose and evenings ended with laughter echoing through a small but warm home in Austin, Texas. He had a steady job as a mechanic, a modest house, and most importantly, a family. But life doesn't always warn you before it changes everything. It started with a phone call that shattered the ground beneath his feet, a late-night accident, a hospital hallway that smelled like antiseptic and fear, a doctor's face that said everything before his words even began. His wife, Claire, was gone before Ethan could say goodbye. Just like that, his world collapsed into silence. And then there was Mason. 5 years old, too young to understand death, but old enough to feel its absence. Too young to ask the right questions, but old enough to notice that his dad cried when he thought no one was looking. Ethan became everything overnight: father, mother, provider, protector. And in trying to be all of it, he slowly lost pieces of himself. Work became harder. Bills piled up. Sleep became a stranger. There were days when dinner was just cereal and nights when Ethan sat awake, wondering how much longer he could keep going. The job at the repair shop didn't last. Too many missed hours, too many distracted mistakes. Eventually, they had to let him go. He understood. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. They moved out of their home, downsized into a small, aging apartment on the edge of town where the walls were thin and the future felt even thinner. Ethan picked up odd jobs, fixing engines, mowing lawns, hauling junk, anything that could bring in just enough to keep the lights on. But even then, it wasn't enough. The car he used for work finally gave out one morning with a long, defeated groan. Without it, he couldn't travel for jobs. Without jobs, there was no money. And without money, there was no stability for Mason. So he did the only thing he could. He went to the auction. The place was crowded, filled with people who knew cars, who knew value, who knew opportunity. Ethan stood among them, out of place in his worn jeans and faded shirt, clutching the last $100 he had managed to save. It wasn't much, but it was all he had left. And then he saw it. The car. Old, rusted, forgotten. But something about it felt different. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was desperation. Or maybe it was the quiet hope of a man who needed something, anything, to go right. When the bidding started, no one else raised their hand. Not until Ethan did. That's when the laughter began. And that's when she spoke. Her name was Vanessa Cole. Confident, polished. The kind of woman who never had to question her next move because life had always made space for her to succeed. She wasn't cruel by nature, but in that moment, she didn't see Ethan as a person. She saw him as a mistake waiting to happen. Her words lingered in the air long after she said them. But Ethan still didn't respond. He just handed over the $100 and took the keys. The drive home was slow, uncertain, filled with rattles and strange noises that made his grip tighten on the steering wheel. But somehow, the car made it. It coughed, sputtered, and groaned its way into the parking lot of their apartment building, where Mason stood waiting by the stairs. Mason's eyes lit up when he saw it. Not because it was impressive, not because it was shiny or new, but because it was theirs. And that was enough. The next 5 days changed everything. Ethan spent every waking hour working on the car, not just fixing it, but understanding it. There was something unusual beneath the rust, something that didn't quite match the car's outward appearance. The engine had been modified, the structure reinforced. Hidden beneath layers of neglect was something rare. Ethan didn't sleep much. He cleaned, repaired, replaced, adjusted. Mason would sit nearby, watching, asking questions, handing him tools with a quiet excitement that reminded Ethan why he couldn't give up. By the 4th day, the car looked different. By the 5th, it felt different. That morning, as the sun rose and painted the sky in soft shades of gold, Ethan turned the key. The engine didn't just start. It roared. Not loudly, not wildly, but with power. Controlled, refined, alive. Ethan froze. He knew engines. And this wasn't ordinary. Word spread faster than he expected. Someone had seen the car, someone who knew what to look for, someone who understood what Ethan had unknowingly discovered. By afternoon, a black car pulled into the parking lot. And everything changed. The man who stepped out was just anyone. He was a legend. A name whispered with respect in racing circles. A man who had built his life on speed, precision, and an eye for hidden potential. He walked straight toward Ethan. No hesitation. No doubt. He circled the car once, then again, his expression unreadable but intense. Finally, he stopped and looked at Ethan. And he made an offer. $5 million. The world seemed to stop. Ethan thought he misheard. But the man repeated it. $5 million. For the car. Ethan's hands trembled. His mind raced. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be real. But the man explained everything. The car wasn't just old, it was a prototype. A rare experimental build that had been lost for years. Hidden in plain sight, overlooked by everyone. Everyone except Ethan. The same people who laughed days ago now stood in stunned silence. And Vanessa. She was there too. Watching. Speechless. Ethan didn't celebrate immediately. He didn't shout or jump or cry. He just looked at Mason, who was staring at him with wide, hopeful eyes. And in that moment, everything Ethan had endured, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every quiet tear, felt like it had led here. He accepted the offer. Not because of the money, but because it meant a future. A real one. The kind where Mason wouldn't have to worry. The kind where Ethan could finally breathe. Life didn't magically become perfect overnight, but it became possible again. Ethan bought a small house. He started his own repair shop. He rebuilt not just engines, but his life piece by piece. And he never forgot where he came from. Weeks later, Vanessa walked into his shop. Not with confidence, but with humility. She apologized. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just honestly. Ethan listened. Then he nodded. Because sometimes, people don't need punishment. They need perspective. And she had found hers. Before this story ends, if it touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, share, and comment. Stories like this remind us that kindness matters more than judgment, and that every person you see is fighting a battle you may never understand. And one special request: comment second chance if you believe life can still surprise us when we're at our lowest. Because Ethan Walker's story isn't just about a car. It's about resilience. It's about hope. It's about a father who refused to give up, even when the world laughed at him. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything.